Welcome back to Primary Source China Investment. This week we're on show S7 and we're talking about the risks and the returns of doing business in China. And our position this week is the risks have gone up and the returns have gone down, which makes investing pretty difficult. In March of this year, it'll be 4 years that we've been doing this show. And in that time, we've said repeatedly that China and the US are moving further away from each other. I mean, we even did a show called The US and China Are Divorcing. What that means more practically, more trade barriers, tariffs, home country bias, protectionism from both Beijing and Washington. The escalation started with Trump's first administration, ran right through the Biden administration, and continues with the Trump sequel. While sometimes people say, oh, this is tit for tat, and Beijing did this, and then Washington did that, or Washington this, then Beijing did that. It's not. It's competition, and everything seems to be on the table. So pay attention. Denying your competitor access to your home market? Yeah. Denying natural resources? Fine. Encouraging consumers to buy local? Yeah. How about arresting business people and journalists? Yeah, that too. We're not here to debate the merits of each of this anecdotal story, but every CEO and board member is going to be asking if the risk is worth the reward. Also, the competition. You know, we don't want to hear about fair competition or unfair competition. If you're looking for an adjective to describe competition in China, it would be fierce. So Trump's position, and maybe he's onto something here, he's saying that access to the US consumer is a privilege. Well, that echoes something that China said 20 years ago. If you want access to China's market, you need to start joint ventures, you need to invest in China. Well, I think that's where we're going to start today, Pengwo. What's your thoughts?
I thought we're back to the hot topic again. Is China decoupling, China and the US decoupling. And then after almost 8 years, right? So let's see the result for the China. So China really reached the trade surplus for the record high in the last year. So the most growth area is the EV, personal computers, and small manufacturers, electrics. So
This is
that's
the biggest exports. This is the biggest exports from China.
yes. So those are like the three areas. That really means China have a very strong competition advantages in this area. So that's really it's hard to compete it. So, but doesn't mean if China doing a good job and that is bad things for other countries. So I think Trump is the primary goals is make American great again and American make American first. So that really means all other countries will follow such same logic and cause the conflict. So that's you can see this kind of the strategy fundamentally cause the conflict immediately. So everybody try to get the bigger pie. And the conclusion is it's such kind of the strategy or competition will solve the problem or reach the Trump's goal. Obviously, it's not. So that is a complicated reason behind the imbalance. Trump just used the tariff. That's a simple way to try to solve it, but looks like it doesn't work.
Right. I'm not so sure this is a long-term strategy. I do think it's a strategy to try and reset some things because if I look at some specific companies, and we talk about China, so let's kind of focus on that. Let's look at Starbucks, right? We've heard that Starbucks is getting their asses kicked in China with Luckin and Coty and all sorts of other startup coffee brands. And it's true. But since Brian Nickel took over in September 2024, the stock is up 30%. And their most recent earnings beat on the top and bottom line. None of that was related to China. and the CEO said China was flat. So you have no growth in China, and yet you're beating on the top and bottom line. Another example was Apple. This is the poster child for China. Apple is the biggest US company, keeps chugging along despite the bad news from, their competitors in China, bad news vis-a-vis Apple and the tariffs, right? In case you missed it, Apple beat earnings even as China handsets disappointed. So Apple has no problem. Starbucks has no problem. The CEO of Coca-Cola, James Quincy, was at Davos. He went out of his way not to mention China, but mentioned India, Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America. It seems to me that these CEOs, because they have better information than you and I do, these CEOs who have gone to Mar-a-Lago, who have gone to the inauguration, who have sat side by side with Trump, understand where he's going, and they're reacting. The last company I wanted to bring up was this company called Elf Beauty. And Elf Beauty, they're a cosmetics company, and they used to make 100% of their products in China. And since the first Trump administration, that number is down to 80, on its way to 70. And then one more final thing, Pengwan, I'll give you the mic, is you have Republican attorney generals, the most powerful lawyers in the US, telling US financial institutions they are underestimating the risk of doing business in China.
So the reason behind that is also quite clear. China market is a really uh, intensive competition market.
Definitely.
I
Yeah.
think it's even much worse than other market. So that is it's big, it's attractive, but everybody try to get the pie and work very hard. So that's probably reason. And for the like the Starbucks, Apple, they are just advantage because they face the global market. So they try to get more benefit from other area. That's obviously no problem for them. For the China market, for example, like the Starbucks. So we can clearly to see Starbucks' service and the taste. It cannot compete with the local competitors. So they have the bubble tea and they have other local coffee store. They have the different strategy. So from the whole competition process, you have to say the competitors can do better than the Starbucks. That's why it cannot grow, especially recent years.
Right. Starbucks is saying they're going to be the premium coffee spot. They're not going to have a Starbucks on every corner. They're going to have a premium experience for coffee. Well, great. That's a strategy because all of the other competitors are going to deliver cheap and cheerful coffee and drinks for the masses. And maybe Starbucks can cut out a niche as the premium coffee provider.
China is still like the majority of the people is still have the relative lower income. So
Yeah.
based on their salary, affordable disposable income, as well as recent big recessions. So obviously nobody have much interest for the premium or higher price of the coffee.
Yeah, I think we're getting to the real point here. If you're looking for investment returns, those companies that traditionally were early into China, those foreign brands that were early into China, will continue to struggle and pull out or find a new way to compete. But those kind of brands that are um, built to serve the Chinese consumer, I think will do very, very well. I mean, I continue to look at big, institutions that do business in China for China, the big banks and the big power companies and the utilities and all those kind of things. I still think those are great places to park your money if you're a Chinese investor. I would avoid those companies that are going to China to try to seek riches at this point. And I'll give you the final word on that, Pengguo.
I think from the investor perspective, it's really you try to select the most profitable, have the growth companies in the market rather than traditional bigger names. I know that's is kind of the get used to the big name and used to their a huge growth rate in history. But right now, I have to say the market get totally changed. You have to really do the fundamental of things. Brand, I realize, is the most unreliable things tied to the performance return.
I would agree with that. And we're going to leave it with that with show S7. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. And whoever you're rooting for the Super Bowl, go Kansas City or go Philly. Thanks.
Thank you.